Hello everyone and welcome to A Slice of My Life. Today is day 31 of my Chris Reeve Knives Small Sebenza 31 experience. I think the number 31 is quite an apt number since this is a 31. And I'd like to thank you guys for the long wait because I know 31 days is not a short time. Like I said in my unboxing and impressions video, I wanted to spend quality time with this knife, seeing as how everyone said that this is possibly the one knife that you will ever need for the rest of your life. So I shall first start off with a small reminder that on day 15, I actually changed the pocket clip out from the original one into this here, which is known as the Hawk pocket clip. This is also by Chris Reeves. And yeah, I mean, you could see a little bit of a snail trail right here. That's because I've been using it. This has been sitting in my pocket for the past 15 days, every single day, whether or not I went out of the house. And so I'm thinking maybe the best way to kind of share with you guys my thoughts about this is to start with all the positives about this knife that I found so far. Now, I've been practicing and I'm able to flick it open now. That came with a lot of practice. The breaking in period was a really long time, in my opinion, compared to other knives. So I told myself I had to open it up, or at least try to flick it open 20 times a day. And around day 4 was the time when I felt a little bit more comfortable flicking the knife open. But I must say that I'm flicking this open with my thumb, using the fingernail on my thumb here and jamming it at the back of the thumb stud. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not able to open it just by putting my thumb on the thumb stud itself. Like I'm just not able to do it. This is actually quite a painful experience. Okay, you know what? Wait, so I'm supposed to be starting with all the positives first. So yeah, I'm able to now very comfortably flick this thing open and then close it with ease. Like I don't feel any kind of resistance. I don't feel any lock stick. That could also be possibly not just because I've broken it in, but because I personally have gotten used to it. Like maybe my fingers a bit stronger, you know, like maybe the way I grip it and everything, I've just gotten used to it. But it's very comfortable for me to flick it open and close right now. I mean, not flick it close, but you know what I mean, right? Just flick it open and then close the knife, right? Yeah, so that's really comfortable for me right now. This thing is smooth. It's not snappy, but it's very smooth. During my experience, a lot of people were asking me about this knife as well. Many people who actually watched the video left some comments. Some people even hit me up in PMs. But a lot of people mentioned the word hydraulic when it came to describing the feel of the action on this knife. And I do have to agree. This feels hydraulic. I feel that it is hydraulic when I'm actually closing the knife. See, when you're doing this action, now to kind of, I guess, put it in perspective or like to kind of better describe it, for people who own pocket knives, sometimes on your knives, when you're closing the blade, you'll feel the blade kind of like, you know, like kind of shaking, or you feel a slight judder when you're closing it. That is not present at all on this. It's crazy. It's really smooth. There's like a slight resistance. It feels like you're squeezing air out some way. You know, that's how I would best describe that hydraulic action on this particular knife. So that's another plus point because that feels actually really good. Next, of course, the impeccable fit and finish. The construction and build of this thing, this is just amazing. Like the tolerances are so good. Everything is so well made and so well put together. How should I say this? There's no wobble. There's no creakiness. And you definitely feel like this thing is really solid in your hand, no matter which way you're gripping it or holding it. This thing just feels really solid. It's like it gives you confidence in hand. Like it really instills confidence when you're holding it, regardless of whatever tasks you're about to do with the knife itself. It feels really good. Solid piece, solid piece. Now talking about construction, I found this ceramic ball bearing on the lock bar very interesting. It is very different from every other knife I've experienced so far, and this thing is quite cool because there is no lock stick, yet it feels really secure, and it feels really smooth when you are closing the knife. Upon deploying the knife, and at first glance it looks like, hey, why is the lockup so much, right? This is like a brand new knife. I mean, you guys saw the lockup in the first impressions video, but if you really look at it carefully, what actually is interfacing with the blade itself is that ceramic ball bearing, and it is at about roughly the 20% mark. It's not the entire lock bar interfacing with the blade itself, and it feels different. You know, it feels different. At the same time, visually having this, you know, sometimes when your lock bar is kind of further out, it makes you feel a bit less confident, like you're worried that the lock bar might give when you're actually using it. But this, you know, looking at it like that, like even if the ceramic ball bearing just for some reason pops out or flies away or gets destroyed, just looking at the lock bar there, you know that this isn't going to close shut on your fingers, right? It's going to be stopping halfway. So that's another plus point I felt. Next, I want to talk about the inlays. Now, this is the black canvas micarta version. Unfortunately, I have to mix this in here because I'm talking about this thing. Now, I was hoping that it was going to be darker in color because, you know, it says black canvas micarta. So I was hoping it was going to be darker. It looks like a mishmash of white and black, and it looks more, I guess overall, it looks more gray. Kind of blends in with the actual scales. But I have to say that the texture on this micarta is super interesting. Now, this doesn't feel like, or doesn't look like they cut micarta in the horizontal axis, I guess. Like, it feels like they cut it in the vertical axis or like sideways, because you see it looks like the layers of the fabric, right, from a side angle, not from a top-down view. And this actually feels very interesting. Like, if you pass your finger across horizontally versus vertically, you feel a completely different texture altogether, and I think this is so cool. So I don't know what they've done with this material. It is smooth, yet it offers a little bit of grip. So that's another plus point I gotta say. Now, the inlays are also done very well. I was thinking, you know, maybe they might pop out halfway through the 30 days because I carried this everywhere I went. But no sign of anything coming off at all. So I think that the fit and finish on this is really, really good. Oh, and of course, yeah guys, I removed the lanyard because I saw no point in having that lanyard on a knife like this. I mean, you see, it fits my hand, right? I don't need the lanyard for an extra grip just in case my pinky wasn't able to grip onto it. But at the same time, there's a certain part exposed when you put it in your pocket, so you don't actually need the lanyard to kind of grip to pull out. And in my opinion now, the biggest plus point, biggest plus point really, is this part here. This is by far possibly the best thing of this knife. Like, no other knife has this. I love how much difference there is in the scales from the front and the back, and I love the fact that there is this diagonal cut here and it slopes up, or it's at least in the same general direction as the scale on top. And so this is super comfortable when you wrap your finger around it. This feels natural. If that's a word, natural, I'm gonna use it. It feels natural, feels comfortable. It feels like it's made for your index finger to sit right there. So sometimes the joint on my index finger is right on the lower scale and it just wraps up like that. That's perfect. Sometimes I have it higher up and it still feels super comfortable. Like, this is really the best feature here in my opinion for this Small Sebenza 31. Jimping is good, no complaints there. The engraving here of the words Idaho made is also very well done. It's super clean. No weird sharp edges or anything. This thing is just super clean. Okay, so now let's talk about the pocket clip. Now, this is the Hawk clip, and in terms of usage, honestly, I prefer using the Hawk clip versus the original clip, or I should say the stock clip, right? Let me just put it here, the stock clip. Now, I'll be swapping them out shortly to kind of illustrate some things. And yeah, I mean, of course they look distinctively different, but the way the Hawk clip is made, see that on the side, there's this little tab that sticks out, and when you squeeze down on it, it lifts up the opening part of the clip. Now, if you look at it sideways, the clip isn't actually touching the scale. I think that's slightly better. So yeah, it's not touching the scale at all. There. So that's the sound of the pocket clip knocking onto the scale. With the help of a cleaning cloth, I'm going to illustrate this. Right, so in my use case scenario, usually I'll just pinch it with my index finger like that and then slip it in. So I'll just lift it up and it slips right in like that. And this is a super awesome feature in my opinion. It makes putting the knife into your pocket and taking it out really easy. And you don't have to worry about anything snagging on your pocket or ripping any kind of threads there. So that's the plus point about the Hawk clip. The negative point is the fact that this sticks out like a sore thumb. I have to be honest, I got quite a few stares. People were like, what's that in the pocket? Like, what kind of clip is that? Because, see, the thing is, neither of these clips are in the deep pocket carry kind of configuration. So you're going to be seeing this much of the knife sticking out of your pocket. I mean, sometimes you wear, like, I guess, formal trousers, and then your pockets are kind of like angled this way. But you see this much sticking out. Even if you put it in your shirt pocket, for example, or your back pocket, you're going to see this much sticking out. And this particular pocket clip draws a lot of attention to it because it looks cool. Like, honestly speaking, the thing looks cool, but that's why it draws attention to it. So with this design here, you know, and then all of it looks like a fancy clip kind of thing. So if you want less attention being brought to your knife in your pocket, then maybe this really isn't the clip for you. But I have to say that, you know, it works really well. The next thing I have to say about this pocket clip is that this part sticks out here. The tab, the thing that makes it easy to use, the thing that makes it good to use, is also one of the biggest gripes about this particular pocket clip, because it sticks out. Now, there's many times I actually brushed my hand against this, whether or not I have a t-shirt covering my pocket, like when I tuck my t-shirts out, or when I'm sitting down and there's no fabric blocking it, I just brush against this. And there are a couple of times when the knife actually almost slipped out. In particular, when I'm wearing trousers and not like the way denim pockets are sewn. So it's at that really steep angle, and I've knocked it. It kind of slips out like that, this far. So that's a negative point to this particular hot clip. So all in all, before I talk about the stock clip, the hot clip works really well in terms of this particular feature. But on the other hand, while it looks cool as well, it sticks out, it draws attention to it, and this part is just like protruding. Okay, now let me swap the pocket clips out. Alright, I got the clip swapped out. This here is the original pocket clip, or I should just call it the stock pocket clip. By no means is this a bad clip as well. The only thing is that you're not able to adjust and lift up the clip by squeezing some kind of a tab up here. But this actually has a comfortable amount of flex. It's not too tight and it's not too soft. And also because of the way it's lifted up like that, it's easy for you to kind of align this to your pocket before actually kind of slipping it in. Now you can see it's not as easy as slipping it in with the hot clip. Of course, I'm using a slightly softer fabric here, but if you just apply some pressure, it will just slip in. And when you look at it this way, yes, everyone, it looks a lot more discreet, in my opinion at least. So I got a lot less stares, a lot less questions when I was having this pocket clip on the knife versus the hot clip. But of course, it has its own downsides. Now, the first thing is that there is a secondary bump here that, in my opinion, serves almost no use. But this part here, of course, is lifted up a little bit. If this irks you, then yeah, you're gonna have to decide which one of the two is the lesser of the two evils, right? I mean, they're not bad. Let me just, it's just a metaphor, okay? It's just a metaphor. This never bothered me at all. It's just that I didn't really feel comfortable, whenever I wanted to put this knife in my pocket. I always caught myself slightly lifting this up with my index finger before putting the knife into my pocket. And that's something that I kind of don't want to have to do all the time. So this really helped because, yeah, I needed to always make sure that this was going to slip into my pocket. And the next thing I will say is that because the pocket clip is so close to the insert here, you actually see a difference in height because of the material and the way it's made. So this might pinch a little bit. If you're wearing something of a thinner fabric, then yeah, it might snag a little bit right here. Usually I wear chinos, I wear denim. So yeah, that didn't bother me, but I wanted to point that out as well. So I think that the stock clip actually is quite good. Now, you'll notice that this is angled, and I love the fact that the insert here is cut out in a way that goes and flows with the pocket clip direction as well. It goes back to what I mentioned about fit and finish. There's a slot cut out here so that the pocket clip can sit flush in there. That's another plus point. And the baseline thing about either pocket clip that I enjoy is the fact that it is angled and not just straight down. So whenever I put it in my pocket, generally I aim for my pocket clip to be sitting straight, like vertically down to the ground. And so this pushes the knife very close to the edge of my pocket on the inside. And then this is a lot more comfortable when this is sitting in my pocket. So that's something that I really have to give Chris Reeves a shout out to. Like the team over at Chris Reeves, you guys really did very well with this pocket clip thing. I enjoyed this part quite a lot. All right, now is the part where I'm going to share with you guys the things that I did not like about this knife. And I'm just going to preface it with you guys first. These things are the things that kind of broke the knife for me. Like that was the deal breaker in my opinion. Now the first thing is the fact that there's this part protruding out. This nub here sticking out in the scale. I just cannot understand why this is present. When you open it up, see it sits in there like that. And this I can understand, right? It's a nice little bump up. But how difficult would it be to change the geometry of the blade just a bit and angle this a bit further down so it sits into your scale closer to the edge here and completely gets rid of this thing sticking out? Like, why is this here? This, every time I feel it, it kind of irks me. Like why? Like, it was so smooth and so sleek here. Like, the entire design of the knife is so sleek until you get this bump here. And that's one major deal breaker for me. I'm like, why? Yeah, so that's really, like, I cannot understand why the thing's sticking out. Like, even if I were to study and try to understand, would this affect the way you know, it interfaces with the stop pin there. It does not. It does not. You could shave that part off and it would still interface with the stop pin or the lock pin with no issues at all. So I really don't understand why this thing is sticking up here. The second thing I would say, and I pointed this out in the first video, is how close the tip of the blade is to the scale. Now, granted, I've never ever scratched myself or I guess hurt myself with the tip there. Not at all. But I must say, this is a huge deal breaker for me. This actually is a deal breaker for me. That the edge of the blade is so close to the back of the scales that it actually touches my hand when I'm closing it. Now, let me just try and get a good lighting angle for you guys so I can kind of illustrate that. You know what? I'll just get a flashlight and I'll shine in. I've got my Rovivon Aurora A8. There we go. So that's how close the edge of the blade is to the scales. I know it's not the best way to kind of show it to you guys, but really it's super close to the scales. And here's the thing, my hands are slightly meatier than most others, and I gotta say, well, people like Samson, people like Qingshi, they actually saw this happen in person. When I'm almost clenching my fingers or when I'm gripping something, see the amount of extra, I guess, meat that overflows? That overflows exactly, perfectly into this slot. And probably that's just me. That's a really personal thing. It's really individual to me. But it's just that whenever you guys saw that right there, like the moment I grip it, or at least when I'm holding the knife in the position that I'm getting ready to close it up, the meat here of my middle finger just sits right there. So when I'm closing it and I'm holding it like this, that right there, I know I can't really show it to you guys on camera, but yes, there are a couple of times when I close the blade and I actually feel the edge just nick my finger right here. Okay, I've not gotten cut by this here before, but it's just that sensation, you know, like of the edge touching you, and you get that fear like, oh wait a minute, did I cut myself? That has happened at least 7 or 8 times so far, and that's something that I really don't enjoy. That's really scary. So if you are someone like me who has a bit more, I guess, who has chonky fingers, or as like Kurt from Blade HQ calls it, if you have hams, then maybe this isn't for you. Now, it could be because this is the small Sebenza and not the large Sebenza. I really don't know, but it's a personal thing. So these two really are the main deal breakers for me. Just this thing sticking out here, that is, in my opinion, an eyesore. And second is because this is just so close to the scales right here that I actually feel the blade touching the meat of my middle finger. That's two things that are kind of like a no-no for me. The last thing I have to say is the overall experience of the action. Now, in terms of ergonomics and everything, this knife is really good. Like, it's great. But I guess a huge part of why I love knives is the action. And like I mentioned before, I'm so used to the action on other knives. For example, any kind of Wii knives, Made knife, or for example, my Spyderco Para 3s. There's that reason why I love it so much. And I realized through experiencing this knife, the act of taking out your knife from your pocket and then deploying it, that action and satisfaction you get from that action, plus then holding it with the ergos in your hand and then performing your cutting tasks and then being able to close it, because closing also is another action. All those things added up together equates to the overall experience of the knife, and I'm just not getting the same kind of experience, or I can't say that, I'm not getting the same joy out of using this knife as compared to other knives. Like for example, when I open it, I think about how much time I spent practicing and forcing myself to be able to flick this knife open to a point that it kind of feels like a chore. You know, like take it out of my pocket. Okay, I've got my Sebenza 31. Okay, I gotta get into this particular position and then use strength here, just flip it open, then do my cutting tasks, and then closing it up with that hydraulic feel. Well, that's really not for me. And so these are kind of like the things that I've experienced and things that make me really reflect about what an ideal experience of a pocket knife is for me. And over the past 31 days, I've decided this isn't a knife for me. Now, granted that the knife is made deliberately so that it could have that hydraulic action, because this is kind of different. Now, let me just quickly explain to you guys. For most knives, or in the case of most knives, if this was the pivot pin, the blade would go onto this pivot pin and interface with this pivot pin directly. But in the case of the Sebenza, you have the pivot pin and then you have this extra like sleeve or like a shim, and then the blade goes around this shim. So when you're actually deploying, opening or closing the knife, there's 2 points of rotation. One is this shim along the pivot pin, and the second is the blade itself along this shim. And with that, you get really consistent action. you get really good reliability. The thing about Chris Reeve's knives is that they are made to be hard users. So even if this falls into mud, all you gotta do is just rinse it out with some water, and you know that the action isn't gonna change. It's gonna be the same, right? It won't feel as gritty as compared to other knives once they are, I guess, taken out of sand and being rinsed off. So that's the reliability portion. But that, of course, you know, the trade-off is that action over there. If you love it, you love it. For me right now, I don't hate this knife, but it's just that I don't love it enough for me to want to keep it and hold on to it for the rest of my life. So I can safely say at this point, everyone, that this is not the one knife that I will ever need for the rest of my life. It's just not for me. Like, even if you tell me now, hey Ben, go try a large Sebenza, I would say it's also the action. So it's a combination of a few things through experiencing the small Sebenza 31 that have led me to my decision. And that is it, everyone. These are all my thoughts, the positives, the negatives, my in-depth, I guess, experience with the Sebenza 31 that has led me to this point today. Thank you so much for sticking all the way throughout and sharing in this slice of my life. I know it was a long one, but I appreciate y'all joining me on this journey as well. If you like the content that I'm putting out, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you do subscribe, make sure that you hit the bell to be notified of any new uploads that I put out. Also, I run a Patreon page. I'll put a link up here to that in case you want to go check it out. We do have Patreon exclusive content as well as Patreon exclusive giveaways from time to time. So if you do become a patron of mine, thank you so much in advance. It really means a lot to me. Once again, everyone, this is my 31-day mark of my Chris Reeve Knives Small Sebenza 31 experience, and I'm going to end it at that. It's a great knife, but it's just not for me, and it's a very personal thing. So those of you who want reliability, those of you who want something that you know you can feel confident holding in your hand, and if you don't have hams like I do, then this might just be that one knife for you. It is not for me, but I'm not knocking any of the quality of a Chris Reeve knife. And I will catch all of you in the next slice of my life. Until then, everyone, Gaga Boost.